we're back here with some more mobile home education for the day. But what I need to get from y'all today is for you to understand when you're walking through a home how to estimate repairs. If you came from the stick-built world, you're gonna often try and overestimate these repairs. You're gonna overestimate on the cost of parts, on the cost of material. And the thing that I must stress for you right now is this key piece: safe, clean, and affordable. We're going for safe, clean, and affordable. So I'm not putting in granite countertops. I'm not putting in brand new stainless steel appliances. I'm not putting in any sort of laminate, high-end laminate flooring or anything of that nature. I'm doing sticky tile. I'm doing cheap carpet. I'm doing used appliances. I'm using used air conditioning systems. I'm going for the safest, cleanest, affordable thing I can do, because the key piece that the end buyer is looking for is affordable. That's why these homes have a demand in this marketplace, is because they're affordable housing. And if I go through and I do $50,000 worth of upgrades to it, A, I'll never be able to get my money back out of it. And B, you're gonna price yourself so far outside of the market that your buyers aren't gonna be there. You're gonna be competing with single family homes, which we're not doing that. So if you're coming from a single family world, remember, man, mobile homes are a different business. It's not the same. So when you're going through estimating your repairs, keep those things in mind. Some things that are going to be big costs for you, as we have always looked at, are the big five. The big five. Let me pause for just a second and take a look at something. I think I got this class just a little bit out of order, but don't worry. I'll get it fixed for you. Nope, maybe not. All right. So with the roofs, what we're going to be looking at is what kind of condition are they in. Give me a second to get it going. There we go. Roofs. What kind of condition are they in? You're going to see two common roof types. You're going to see composition shingles, which are what you see on just about every house out there in the world, and you're going to see metal roofs. Now, I personally truly like the metal roofs, but roofs can get expensive and expensive quick. So if you're buying a property that has roof damage, I would strongly suggest getting a professional out there to get it inspected first. But some key things that you're going to want to look at on especially the composition roofs: one layer. Only one layer for a shingle roof. So if you're looking at the roof and you can tell that there's been more than one layer of shingles put on that roof, beware. These homes were not built to handle that kind of weight. It might sound like I'm really harping in on this, but it's important. If I put 2 layers of shingles on there, and then let's say I throw on a heavy snow load, and I take the extra weight of the shingles, which might be another 1,000+ pounds on the roof, that extra 1,000 pounds plus the snow, is that roof going to be able to handle all that weight? Is it going to collapse? I've heard of stories. I've heard of more than one story of a roof collapsing on a home under heavy loads. So be careful with that. And if you are going to buy that unit, make sure that you strip at least both of those layers off and put a new roof on it. We'll go through and we'll talk about some of those costs as we get closer. But beyond the shingle roofs, we've also got what we're going to call roof overs. Roof overs have many different designs, but it's basically like a carport that's being built over the house. It's not a roof on the roof, it's a roof over the roof. And you can see here in that picture there on that middle example, they literally just framed a new roof over the top of that house. Now there's several different designs I've seen people do where they like lay 2x4s out across the roof and then put metal over the top of that. Whichever design it might be, there's no way for me to adequately express the need to inspect that system. If you're going through and you're not seeing any obvious signs of water penetration inside the house, your roof system's probably good. But if you do have water penetrating into that house, you're gonna need to get an expert quote to get you some ballpark ideas for that repair, because roofing systems in mobile homes can be pretty difficult to play around with. The last one that we're looking at here is a metal roof. And water leaks, you know, for me, anything can be fixed. Like if I'm looking at a house and I've got like a little bitty water spot in the bathroom where I can tell at some point in time it had been leaking, that doesn't bother me whatsoever. I can get up on that roof and fix it for likely less than $50. But if I walk into a bedroom and the entire ceiling's collapsed and I can see through the roof, now we're talking about a whole different thing. And the whole reason that I'm buying this mobile home, and yes, I could fix that big hole in the roof. Yes, I could fix all that sheetrock in the room. Yes, I understand that I can fix all that. But does it make sense? And what I mean by sense is, does it make money? My goal with this mobile home is to be into it for the least amount of money as I possibly can, and then turn around and sell it on payments for the most that I possibly can, and that's where I'm getting my return from. Now, if I go into this unit, I'm having to spend $15,000 in repairs, plus I'm having to pay $10,000 to get the unit. I'm all into it for 25 grand. That's not a good deal for me. I want to be into these deals for less than 10, if not 8, for my own self. If I'm normally into a unit for less than 8,000, I can get about 100+% return. That's what I'm looking for. If you're okay with less than 100% return, then that $8,000 number doesn't much matter to you. I'm just throwing some thoughts out there because I get on rabbit trails. So if you want me to bring back the subject, just yell at me. So I'm going to keep on going. So like I was talking about earlier, I was talking about water spots. So if you see this water spot right here, that is a very small water spots. I'll see those very often in mobile homes, in the bathrooms, as well as around the kitchens and laundry rooms. And what I have found from these is it's often the vent stack that goes out the roof. So if you don't understand the plumbing systems, you don't need to, but if you look at the roof, you'll see several smaller pipes that penetrate out the top of that roof. Whenever I see spots like that in the bathroom, kitchen, laundry room, what I find is it's that boot around that vent pipe that's leaking. So I can send a helper up there, a handyman up there with a tube of tar, and then just tar around those boots. And more often than not, you're going to have that problem solved. But if I go back and I look at this other roof or this other ceiling, now I can see that there's water penetrating there, and it's been penetrating long enough that it's created two cracks in the sheetrock. I can see attempts at previous sheetrock repair, and I see the water damage there. That right there, if I was to be looking at it for my own purchase, I would be cautious. I'd be up there on the roof verifying that the roof repair is not going to be a full new roof, because after to put a full new roof on a single wide home, I'm probably going to be looking at the low side of $1,500 to the high side of about $3 grand. Well, if I'm looking to be all into a unit for around 8,000 and I have to take into consider purchase price, if I have to spend 3,000 on a roof, then I've lost almost all of my repair budget just on the roof. So I need to be conscious of that roof. Roofs can get you into a lot of trouble when we're doing these homes. So that's why I'm talking a lot about them. What else do we have here? So we were talking about earlier that we should only do a single layer. And the primary reason is that these roofs just are not built for that kind of capacity. I've had to open up several of these mobile home roofs, and the two that I opened up, so I can't say that every home is this way, but they had 2-inch by 2-inch wood trusses. For those that have not done construction before and you're not familiar with what a truss is, the truss is kind of that pre-built arch that kind of goes up there into the attics that opens up and creates the roof line. I don't really have a technical term for it, but that's basically what the truss is. On most single family homes, your rafters that are going up to the peak are normally made out of 2x6s. And if they are trusses, they're made out of 2x4s. So if you take a 2x4 truss and then we take a look at a mobile home, the mobile homes have 2x2 trusses, half the meat. They're not designed for a heavy load. Why are they using such, I'm not going to say cheap material, but why are they going through and using 2x2s in the roof instead of 2x4s like we'd see on single family homes? The answer is simple: weight. These homes have to be light. They have to drive down the highway at 60 miles an hour, and they have to have a truck that's going to be able to pull them. If they go through and add all this extra weight to these homes, you're not going to be able to pull them down the highway. So everything on the home is designed to be lightweight. They're trying to get as light as they possibly can, so they put 2x2 trusses up there. What's that mean to you? Don't put a roof over it. Don't put 2 roofs on it. You always got to remove the shingles and put new ones on. I hate being a harp on that, but it's the truth. Other things to look at is if you are going to put a new roof on this home, make sure that you use a mobile home roofer or somebody that has experience with mobile homes. And what I mean by that is these trusses are made out of 2x2s. Well, if I've got somebody that's used to roofing single family homes and they show up to the job site and their helper starts carrying all these shingle bundles up to the roof, and I see them all stacking them on the peak being the top of the roof, all of those shingles up there across the peak, I could almost be willing to bet that by the end of the day, my peak snaps. You can't put that kind of weight on a home, especially on a mobile home like that. So if they are bringing those bundles up, they need to be spread out evenly all across that roof. So if you do hire a roofer, pay attention to what's going on. You know, look up there while they're loading the shingles. And if they're loading them all on the peak, you need to have a strong conversation with them because they can ruin your mobile home doing that. Other things to look at. If I'm looking to replace a roof on a single wide, around 4,000, or excuse me, 2,500, I'd say the lowest I could look at spending would probably be about 1,500, and that's way on the low side. And the high side would probably be around 3,000 for a single wide mobile home. Obviously, widths and lengths play into factor on this, but if I'm doing a composition roof, 2,500-ish for a single wide, around 4,000-ish for a double wide is what I would just ballpark in my head until I had a quote. So, what else do we have here? Let's also take a look at another roof type. We've got metal roofs. I like metal roofs. I've always liked metal roofs. I've had a lot of other investors complain about the metal roofs, but for me, I like them. Why do I like them? I think they're easy to repair. They don't cost a whole lot of money to get fixed, so I like that. Where I've had other investors complain is just the ongoing maintenance of them. With a metal roof, the seams come together, and where those seams come together become potential spots for roof leaks. That's why a lot of the times on older mobile homes, you'll see driving through the country tires laying on these roofs. Those tires, what happens over time is wind will get underneath that metal, and that metal will start flopping around, and as it flops around, it creates gaps where those seams come together. That's what the tires are for. Now, that is the complaint that I get from other investors, but where I come in and I was like, okay, even if I do have those seams pulling apart, what I have found is from my side is I can just go up there with a roll roof, not like a roll roof as in like asphalt roll, but I can go up there with a tar roll, and I've got that actually here in the slide. Where am I at here? So there's this stuff right here. It's called Blackjack Silver Seal 300. I have found that I can go through and completely reseal, excuse me, got a phone call. I can go through and completely reseal a mobile home roof for around $700 or so. You get out there with a, what do you call that? A 3/4 nap roller and a roller frame and an extension pole, and you get a couple, or probably about 10 buckets of that blackjack stuff, and you can completely reseal that roof in a day. It adds a little bit of R value to the home, and I don't have a problem anymore. So if I have to look at replacing a composition shingle roof where I'm looking at bare minimum probably $1,500 at the absolute lowest to repair versus $600 or $700 at my probable highest cost, as long as my roof's not like completely blown off. If I have a metal roof, I can expect to repair it for under $1,000, and that's to do a complete repair on it. That's not a replacement. I've never actually replaced the metal roof on one of those, and I don't necessarily know how easy or hard that would be. I've never done it. Those kind of goes through the roofs on that. Roof overs, I'm going to lean towards you probably should never do a roof over. I'm saying that myself. If you are purchasing a mobile home that the roof is so bad on it that you're having to do a complete and total roof over on it, it's probably not the wisest of investments. But if you show up to a house that has already had a roof over done, and remember, roof over meaning like they kind of built a carport on top of the house. If they've done a roof over already and it's not causing any leaks and there's no problems, I would still buy that unit. I wouldn't be scared to buy that unit. But if I'm buying a house that I have to do a roof over on, I'm not going to buy it. It's just too much. But if you do come into these, like you'll see them, there's all different kinds of ways to roof over. One style that I've seen done and I like personally is they'll take a 1" by 4" piece of wood and they'll lay it down in like a grid all across the roof. They come back through and fill that grid with styrofoam sheathing to add a little bit of R value, and then they lay aluminum panels over the top, corrugated panels over the top. That seems like a really good roof over to me. But what about the ones where they build a carport around the house and just put a new roof over the carport? Not as good of a design in my opinion, probably extremely effective, but not a really good design in my opinion. But hey, if it works, buy it. Do I suggest you do it? Not unless it's in your budget to do so, and it's going to give you the kind of returns that you're wanting. In this second paragraph right here of this slide though, to describe that roof over system that I was just talking about, search on YouTube for roof over, how I did it. And what you'll find there is there's a guy that did a how-to video on roofing over a mobile home, which I think is a very good way of doing it. So if you do have to do a roof over, or you are having to fix a metal roof, or you're having to do something to that roof and you're looking for a quality option that may or may not be as expensive, look at that video. If you're going to have to do a roof over though, I'm not giving you any quotes on that. You're going to have to go out and figure that one out. You're going to have to get somebody to quote that for you. Other things I'm going to look for while I'm on the house. We've discussed the roof. We spent quite a bit of time on discussing the roof. Let's start going through the outside of the house, and we'll start with the siding. Here, we got two pictures here. Obviously, the house on the left is not a mobile home, but it is a very common problem that you will see in mobile homes. All of that masonite style siding is rotted out at the bottom. And you'll see that all the time on mobile homes. You will see that very common where the skirting meets the home, as well as around where the windows mate to the walls, because those are areas where you'll find water pooling or getting into it. If I do find a scenario like that, it's not that big of a fix. So we'll talk about that more in a second. But the picture on the right is something that I need you to focus in on and look at. That is not rotting siding. That is rotting framing. And that looks like there's been severe termite damage to the underside of that home. And looking at that, that is going to tell me that that is a home I would likely never want to buy. If there is that much termite damage to the framing of that house, I would likely never buy that mobile home. But let's go through and take a look at these exterior walls. On the exterior walls, I would likely find aluminum/metal. I like these homes, and I said this on many classes, many slides, and I just like them. They're super cheap to fix. They're super cheap to make look good. You get out there with a pressure washer, most of the times they look just fine. And if you don't look good after a pressure wash, come back through and paint them. Painting a single wide, no more than $1,500 to paint the outside of it, and a double wide, probably around $3,000 at the best to completely make the outside of that home look good. Where I do find some bigger problems is in the wood panels. That picture right there shows like a Dutch lap siding or something like that. These wood panels I'm referring to are like these ones here on the left, this picture here on the left, that masonite vertical beadboard style siding that's made out of that masonite material. Those wood panels, like I said, quite often are going to start rotting out right around the skirting. When I did my first mobile home and I saw all of that rotten, I had went through and replaced all of the masonite siding throughout the home, all the way around the house. I don't remember exactly what the cost was, but I think in the material was about $800, and the labor was probably about another $1,000. So I was looking probably around close to $2,000 to make that repair. Not a bad price, but something I started doing by the time I got to mobile home 2, 3, 4, and 5 is instead of replacing that entire panel, if I'm looking, and I'm just going to use some general numbers. If I'm looking at an 8-foot tall wall and it's the bottom foot that's rotten, why am I replacing the entire 8 foot of that wall if it's only the bottom foot that's rotting? What I would do is I'd go down about 18 inches off the bottom and I would cut a line all the way down the side of the house. And I would remove just that bottom 18 inches. With that, just the bottom 18 inches removed, that's where all my rotten siding was. I would then go out and buy my siding or my replacement panels, and I'd cut those down to 18 inches each. Well, at 18 inches each times X amount of panels around the house, and let's just say instead of it being $800 in materials, it ends up being $150 in materials. That's a big difference. But whenever I go to install that bottom 18 inches, put what's called a Z-bar in there. And if you don't know what a Z-bar is, don't worry. You can talk to your handyman. You can talk to the guy that's doing the repairs for you. They should know what a Z-bar is. If they don't, Home Depot or Lowe's will know what a Z-bar is. But make sure that that Z-bar is in there. And all it is a piece of metal flashing that goes behind the first piece of wood, and then it comes out from under and then over the top of the new one. And I know my hand signals are probably getting you nowhere near where you need to be, but it's just a little Z-bar that allows the water to not go into the wall. Put that Z-bar in, put that bottom 16 to 18 inches on, and you're good to go from there. And if you do have to replace them, it's about $25 a sheet for a new exterior siding for that masonite. About $25 a sheet, and the sheet's 4 foot by 8 foot. So not too expensive of a repair if you're using a handyman. The next one, vinyl siding. I do not particularly care for the vinyl siding on the houses. They look beautiful when you get them in their good condition, but the homes that I'm trying to buy are normally the ones around that $300 or that free home all the way up to maybe a max all-in cost of around $8,000 to $10,000. If you're getting one of these homes that have vinyl siding on it and you're getting it at that kind of a discount, the vinyl siding's probably seen better days. The sun bleaches them a lot. The sun makes them brittle. They get a bunch of holes in it, especially around anywhere where they're going to be weed eating. Obviously, the skirting gets beat up, but as it starts kicking up rocks, that bottom couple of feet of that vinyl siding ends up with holes in it. If there's been any kind of hailstorm, you end up with holes all in it. Replacing small sections of vinyl siding, not that bad, not that expensive. A couple $100 to, let's say, replace, a couple 100 square foot. Not too bad. But if I end up having to replace the entire home, I might be looking at $3,000 to $4,000 for a single wide. I don't have exact numbers for that because I've never done it on a home. But when I did a quick Google search trying to figure out what vinyl siding was going to cost for per square foot area, it looks like the quotes were coming in around $4,000. So do you think that you could probably get a handyman to do it for, a couple thousand? Potentially. But things to be thinking about, things to be looking out for whenever you go out and buy these homes. Aluminum panels, wood panels, vinyl siding. All right, so going through the outside of the home. If I go back through, I've talked about the roof. We're talking about the outside. I think I discussed this further on, but skirting is one of the other big things you're going to look at on the outside of a house. I budget about $1,000 to $1,200 for material and labor to skirt a single wide home. To skirt a double wide home, I'm looking around $2,000. It's not that much more expensive because even though it's a double wide home, the lengths are still the same and the widths just got a little bit wider. So not too much more expensive to skirt a single wide or a double wide home. Other things to think about is a front porch. Like if we're looking at just a small porch, $500. If we're looking at a set of steps, $300, $200, $300. If we're looking at a bigger porch, $800 to $1,000 to build a full new one. If I show up to a home though and it's got a deck on it, and I may have this covered further on, so if I'm talking twice, you'll get it twice. But if I got a deck that's built sturdy and it's not falling over, but it looks bad, Home Depot may sell it, or Lowe's. Home Depot or Lowe's, I think it's Home Depot that sells it, but they sell a decking material that's a paint, and it's a sanded paint. It's kind of like a sanded, really thick sandy paint. And you can get it in really nice colors. You just go on there with a roller and you just paint the deck, and it gives it a nice sanded texture and a nice new color, and it'll take an old deck that looks bad and make it look brand new for a couple $100. So that's just a tip that I'm throwing out there on that. Once I'm starting to dig into the house, I'm going to figure out what kind of plumbing system's in the house. All the way through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, most homes were built with a plastic piping system called Quest, Q-E-S-T. I absolutely hate Quest. But most of all the houses I've bought had Quest in them. I've only had to completely repipe 2 homes. But whenever I'm dealing with Quest, if I'm finding soft spots in the floor, especially in areas where there's no water, it's probably a Quest line under the house that is leaking and spraying water up onto your subfloor. I figured that out on the hard way on one of the houses I bought. But Quest just leaks all over the place, and you're going to have a lot of problems, especially if you're starting to replace plumbing fixtures. When I get in there, I start replacing, let's say, a kitchen sink. I go in there and I replace that kitchen sink. What I'm going to find is as I start working on that sink, I'm going to be jiggling those lines. And when I jiggle those plumbing lines, it causes vibrations, and those vibrations cause further leaks. And so you start getting into Quest, and what's going to happen is you'll end up with leak number 1 that turns into leak numbers 2 and 3. And then when you repair leaks number 2 and 3, you end up with repairs number 4 and 5 to add on to it. I don't want to scare you away from homes with Quest. Just understand that there's going to come a special level of care when you do buy those. Plumbing. Now, if I have to go through and I have to completely replumb a single wide home, it's not that hard. Like, I could do it for about $300 in material plus labor. Whatever your labor cost is whatever your labor costs, but a roll of like 100 foot of PEX, which is really all I need is 2 rolls of that, I can get it for $100. So a couple $100 and some fittings, and I can have that home redone in not too long of a time, because those homes more often than not have all the plumbing lined up on one side. So it's like there's the bathroom at one end, there's the laundry room right next to it, there's the kitchen right next to it. So all the plumbing just shoots down one side of there. You go underneath the sinks, you cut your lines, you go underneath, grab the old stuff, pull it out, tie your new stuff onto it as you're pulling it out, and then boom, come back through. And it's not that hard of a job. So Just kind of throwing it out there as a, don't get overwhelmed or discouraged, and just make sure that when you're working with your, I say chuck and truck. You're not going out there getting an established general contractor. You're not going out there finding, extremely, you're not looking for the big companies. You're not looking for the people that are putting out billboards. You're looking for, the guy that's got his little truck, maybe have a magnetic sign on it and a bunch of tools in the back. If you get those kinds of people, you can replumb an entire house for, I'd say, $500 to $600 without a problem. All right, HVAC. This can be an expensive item. Like if we're looking at a single family home and we're going to do a full new split system, we might be looking at $3,000 to $5,000 for a system, depending on who you're talking to and what you're doing with that. But if I'm looking at $3,000, that's still, yet again, a very big portion of my allocated budget for repairs. I've said more than once, I don't want to be in these homes more than 8 to 10 grand. And if $3,000 that goes into an air conditioning system, that wipes out a big chunk of my budget. So older homes, like the ones built in the 60s and 70s, window units all day long. Even if you can get them at the pawn shop for a significant discount, go to the pawn shop and get you some window units. I would not put the window units in though until the home was ready to sell and or was sold, because window units come up missing in mobile home parks. Other things to look at is, let's say it does have a central HVAC system in it, and you go in and you turn the thermostat on and it'll blow air, but it's not blowing cold air. Well, it might cost, let's say I want to replace the condenser. Maybe the condenser's not working. I could probably get a used condenser installed for around $500 to $800. If I get that used condenser installed, $500 to $800, great. What happens if I've got a leaky evap coil? Evaporator coil is about $300. Air handler, another $500. That's about what we're looking at. If it's an older system though that has R22 in it, R22 systems can be extremely expensive to upgrade. But what I might look at instead, and this is just a side tip for anybody that's out there, if I do have an R22 system, and let's say it just had a leak in there, I still have a good compressor. My evaporator coil is just a little old and it's got a leak, or they find a leak. Whatever reason, it's leaking. Something you may or may not know is that you can convert R22 systems into R407. It's not R410. I'm almost positive it's R407, but R407 has a very similar temperature and pressure quality as R22. Side note, convert your R22 over to the R407. You can probably do that for a couple $100 versus what you would have to pay to refill it with R22. So if I had to go through and completely replace it with like an R410A system, I might be looking at spending $3,000. But if I just go through, repair the leak and convert the system from R22 over to R407, I might be able to get that done for under $1,000. Throwing that out there. All right, underneath the home. So this is an important thing. Looking at these pictures here, the one on the left is not a mobile home, but you can see a very clean example of what the underside of a home looks like. You got a vapor barrier on the ground there, as well as a belly underneath. What I'm looking there on the right though is a mobile home. And that mobile home there on the right, you can see the cinder block constructions, the piers, those cinder block piers holding the home up. They've put a little bit of a vapor retardant around those piers. And I've got this skirting around the outside of the home. I'm not seeing anything specific with that home that's causing me any concerns or confusion. I'm not seeing any strapping though, except for the other side of the house, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I want to make sure I see quality strapping under there, and we'll talk more about that here in a second. But when I'm looking underneath the home, biggest concern that I'm wanting to make sure is that I don't have water puddling underneath that house. Water puddling underneath that house will cause mold, will cause all kinds of problems with that house. I need to make sure that I am not storing water underneath the home. Other little things that I can pay attention to while I'm looking under there is, does the dryer vent duct outside of the house? You'll see every once in a while where they'll just duct the dryer straight down into the crawl space, and it'll leave all kinds of moisture problems under there with mold and stuff like that. Want to make sure that the dryer is venting out. If it's not venting out, not that big of a deal. It might cost you $50 to get a handyman to go under there and vent it out the skirt, but make sure that it is venting. The belly, okay? What is the belly? What is the belly of a mobile home? It is the vapor retarding seal that goes underneath the mobile home. You got the mobile home up here, and then you got the frame that it sits on. Well, between that frame and the home is just a tarp. It's kind of like a tarp, and it spans from one side of the house to the other and covers the entire bottom of that house, and that's what we're going to call the belly. Well, inside of that belly, we're going to have insulation. We're also going to have plumbing. Plumbing such as your cold water supply lines, your hot water supply lines, and you may even at times have your drain waste vent up in there, not your sewage lines, your sewer lines up in there. Well, if that belly gets damaged, and as we see here in this picture here on the slide, you can see where that belly has got a hole in it. Little hole like that, it's not the best. It'd be better if I could get in there and seal it, but I may or may not. But if that entire belly has been cut open and is just absolutely destroyed, there's going to be a lot of problems with that mobile home moving into the future. I may or may not purchase that home depending upon how much other things are going on with it. But some of the things that could have problems with is now you're dealing with rodents, raccoons, squirrels and stuff getting up in there. You've got all that insulation up in there. That insulation is there to protect your pipes. Well, if that insulation is no longer there and I've got all my pipes running through that belly and it freezes outside, well, all my piping's freezing as well. So things for you to think of, things for you to be aware of. If it's got a small problem in the belly, I'm not going to be too worried about it. But if the entire belly's gone, somebody's come through and cut it all up, I don't like it, but I could probably hire somebody if it's still a good deal to come through and replace that belly with a with some plastic sheeting for probably 2 guys about a day, two or three guys a day. So the material itself's not that expensive. You could probably get the material for $100. It's going to be the labor that costs you. So whatever your labor ends up costing you, I'd say to replace the belly, maybe about $800. Just throwing that out there. 700 in labor, 100 in parts. Possibilities. The last one here, I don't know why I picked that picture, but this last one here that I'm looking at is axles. If I'm looking underneath the house, I want to verify that it still has the axles, it still has the tires, and it still has the tongue. What I mean by the tongue, and that's the piece that attaches to the truck. So if I'm looking at a trailer, that little triangle-shaped piece at the front that attaches to the trailer, that's called the tongue. I'm wanting to make sure that the tongue is underneath the house, and I'm wanting to make sure the axles are underneath the house. If I have no intentions of moving this home, it's not that big of a deal. But if there is any intent at all of moving that home, I want to make sure I've got axles and I want to make sure I got a tongue. Those are good things for me to know about. If they're not there and I plan on moving it, I'm going to renegotiate with the sellers, being like, hey, I'm missing the tongue to this house, I'm missing the axles to this house, and I'll see if I can get a discount on it because it's going to be a little bit more of a cost for me to move. Other things to look at while I'm underneath that house is going to be the foundation. Okay, the picture on the left is a fairly good example of what I could see of a decent installation. What I'm seeing there is a single stack block sitting on like a 2 foot by 2 foot base. I'm looking at the picture on the left. It's a single stack block on a 2 foot by 2 foot base, and we've got wood shims up at the top. Wood shims are fine at the top, but I don't want a wood pier. Like, I don't want to see more than like a couple of inches of wood shims at the top. This meets all those criteria. I'm seeing strapping going down the side, which is, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but the strapping's good. Picture here on the right. Now, if I look at this picture here on the right, I see no strapping, and we'll talk about that again yet, like I said, here in a minute, but I don't see any strapping at all, and I'm already seeing 2 or 3, if not 4 piers that are starting to lean off to the left. If I'm crawling under a house and I see those piers, and I see those piers rolling to the left like that, or they're not standing tall, then I'm going to need to get somebody underneath that home to clean up the foundation. Okay? Looking at this, fortunate for us as an investor, leveling out a foundation on a mobile home is not that expensive. I can get somebody to level a home. Cheap side, $300, high side, $500 for each section. If I got a double wide, take whatever number I just gave you times 2. They're not that expensive because all they have to do is get down there with the bottle jack, and they jack the home up, and then they start sticking shims in there and restack the blocks. It's not an expensive procedure. It takes them a couple hours to get it done. But looking here, you see two styles of blocks. I've got a single block stack on the left, and I've got a double block stack on the right. With the double block stacks, the layers should go parallel to each other. So if one's going up left and right, the other one should go top to bottom, however you want to go, but you should just alternate the directions of the blocks. So if I crawl under a house and I see 2 blocks stacked side by side straight up and they don't ever overlap, that was not installed properly. But overall, not an expensive repair. All right, so piers. There's an obvious pier that has failed right there. That one is completely laying over on its side. And then here's another example of something that I would need to be concerned with. If you look at that picture, you look at the pier on the right, it's leaning back to the right, and it looks like it is failing. If we look at the pier to the left, that pier on the left is also failing, and it's falling off to the left. Why am I concerned with this one more specifically than the one on the left, though? What is it about this home on the right that has me so concerned? Why I am so concerned about this home on the right is the height of those piers. It is everything to do with the height of those piers. A pier should not be more than about 36 inches, if I recall, without it being an engineered pier. So going underneath that home, that's not something that's going to be able to just be repaired, because that height underneath that home looks like it's actually 3, 4, possibly even 5 foot tall. To get a pier that height, I would need an engineer to design that pier for me. So unless that home was just a stellar deal and I started seeing installation like that, I would be nervous, because I'm going to have to get that fixed. You know, there's no way I'd be able to consciously sell a home that's got piers like that underneath it. Okay? So now that I've dealt with the top of the home being the roof, the outside of the home looking at the siding, we've crawled underneath the home a little bit. Let's take a look at the inside of the house. Subflooring. Soft spots in the house are not uncommon but need to be remedied. What I am finding on my side is that for every penetration through the subfloor, I can normally fix for about 50 to 100 bucks a hole. Now, if it needs to be the entire, let's say it's not uncommon for a kitchen near the sink, or a laundry room near the hot water heater, or near the air conditioning system, or the bathroom, for the entire subfloor to just be destroyed, gone. I should be able to go into a bathroom and put all new subfloor in for around 250 to 300 bucks. They're going to have to remove the tub, which is not a difficult job to do. It's not like a single family home where I've got tile holding the tub in. I have to bust the tile out, pull out the sheetrock, get the tub out. It's nothing like that. Manufactured homes were built in a manufacturing facility, and everything goes in modularly. So on one of these tubs, I normally just have a piece of trim to unscrew the drain, and I can pick the tub out of there. I can pull a tub out of a house probably in about 20 minutes and put a new one in another half hour. So I can swap out a tub in probably less than an hour for the average mobile home. Well, if I pull that tub out, I now have access to that, pull the toilet, and I may or may not pull the vanity. And if I pull all that, all I've got is 2 sheets of plywood to throw in and then put everything back in on top of it. It's not a difficult repair. That's what I'm looking for. I'll have a handyman do something like that for me. And then throughout the rest of the house, I'll just go out and buy a sheet of plywood. Sheet of plywood, $25, 3/4 inch plywood. If I have a little 2-foot hole over here, I'll cut that subfloor out, put a new patch in on top of it. I'm good to go. When it looks at flooring, I'm looking for safe, clean, affordable. I might go out and purchase carpet remnants and put different color carpet in the bedrooms, and maybe put a solid color in the living room. All of the carpet doesn't have to match throughout the house. But even if I did put brand new carpet in, my total cost for carpet installed, including pad and material, shouldn't be more than 80 cents to $1 a foot installed. You should find some really cheap carpet, really cheap pad, and go in there. Beyond that, vinyl sticky tile, like just 12 by 12 vinyl sticky tile. All day long, you can get it for like 20 to 30 cents a square foot. Go in there and have that installed. It goes in real fast. The real low-end laminate, no matter what though, I shouldn't be looking to spend for more than about 80 cents a foot to put flooring in this. What's that mean to me? Well, if I've got 1,000 square foot, single wide mobile home, which isn't an uncommon size, I should be able to put all new flooring in that place for about 800 bucks installed. Well, if I'm looking at the outside of a house and I'm looking at about 1,500 bucks for painting, and I'm looking at another 1,000 for skirting, that's 2,500 bucks. 2,500 bucks in the outside of the house looks pretty damn good. I go inside and I spend $800 on flooring, and let's say another $1,500 on paint on the inside. All in, I'm looking at around $4,000, and this place looks pretty good already. Everything's not perfect, everything's not beautiful, but it's safe, clean, and affordable. That's what I'm trying to get to. All right, so let's look at some other stuff. We're looking at skirting. I've already mentioned this, but I figure about $750 in materials for a single wide, and plus labor. I say $750 per section. Double wides don't really cost that much more for a skirting. I'd say about 50% more. So add another $350, $400 to that, and you should be able to skirt a double wide for about that price. Bathrooms, a new bathtub, $225 all day long. You can get them at, what's the name of that place? mobilehomepartsstore.com. You might be able to find a mobile home parts dealer. Just go to Google and say mobile home parts store near me or something like that. I know in DFW we've got 2 or 3 mobile home places, but a tub, $225. A sink, they're plastic molded, $22 for a sink. These are actual prices. Faucets, $8 to $22. I should be able to replace a faucet in my bathroom for $8. I should be able to replace the shower valve in my shower for around $15 to $20. Kitchen sink, $20. We're looking at plastic faucets. They're not expensive. If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you're looking at all those pretty ones up top, well, guess what they don't have up there on the pretty ones up top? That little $8 plastic one that's sitting down on the bottom in an unmarked box. Those are the faucets that we're putting in. In the kitchen, I'm using used appliances, as cheap as I can get. I try to make them all the same color, but if one's Whirlpool, the other one's G, and the other one's LG, I don't really care. I'm looking for something that works, and that, that's really the main thing. I want something that works. Sheetrock. Sheetrock's not that big of a deal inside of a mobile home. If I do find areas of sheetrock that need to be repaired, what I'll do is I'll go out and buy a piece of 3/8 sheetrock from Home Depot. It's not 1/2 rock in these houses, they're 3/8 rock. But most of the time in mobile homes, the rock itself is got, what do you call that? Wallpaper on it. It's not painted, it's just a wallpaper. So if I have a wallpaper in the living room and I don't want to repaint the entire living room, but I need to replace that panel, what you can do is go into a bedroom and pull a panel off of that. Make sure it doesn't have any electric plugs or anything like that cut into it, but pull a panel out of a bedroom and take that out in the living room and install it in the living room. Now you've got the hole in the living room fixed, but you still need to put a panel in the bedroom. Well, you can go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy a piece of 3/8 rock, install that rock onto the wall. Now I only have to paint the bedroom, and I don't have to paint all the living room because I wanted to keep the living room okay. Does that make sense? Something else to think about whenever you're installing sheetrock. Sheetrock comes from the manufacturer with beveled edges. They do that so you can create a bed joint for creating a soft or a solid wall. Well, in mobile homes, they don't put bed joints in them. That's because when they drive down the highway, things move, bed joints crack out, it doesn't work. They put little seam strips over where the sheetrock mates up. But the rock that I buy from Home Depot will have a beveled edge on it. So if I try and install that rock on it, it's gonna not match up to the other one. What you're gonna need to do is when you install that sheetrock, install it backwards. Flip it over, the back won't have any bevels on it. You can stick it up against the wall, screw it down just fine, put your seam tapes on there, and then paint, and it'll never look any different. So that's my little tip for you on that. I don't have a whole lot more to look at on this side. If you're trying to find that handyman, I suggest going out there and hanging out at the Home Depot and Lowe's. Find the guy that's showing up in a truck full of tools, maybe has a magnet on the side of his car, and just get with as many of those people as you possibly can and keep a hold of their phone numbers for future work. That's all I've got for you on this one for walking and inspecting the home. I'll go through more about construction management and stuff with that on another class. I hope you got some value out of this. Drop some names, comments, questions below. If you like the course, drop some comments below. We do have the forums available to you to ask questions. I will personally be answering those questions. So jump on, hang out, enjoy, and thank you for being a part of this.